Benvenute e benvenuti a questo secondo appuntamento di Changemaker Communities. Come sapete, Ashoka lavora in oltre 90 paesi per abilitare processi di cambiamento sistemico e di trasformazione dei territori, e questa serie di appuntamenti ha l'obiettivo di approfondire il lavoro di abilitazione di ecosistemi ai quali Ashoka lavora a livello internazionale. Changemaker Communities non a caso nel percorso di si è messo un corso di avvicinamento all'Ashoka Changemaker Summit, evento di spicco che da anni riunisce nelle capitali dell'innovazione europee i changemaker più all'avanguardia della scena internazionale e che quest'anno si terrà a Torino nei primi 3 giorni di dicembre. Ci siamo messi in cammino con 𝐁𝐫𝐚𝐳𝐢𝐥 perché il Summit di Torino non vuole essere un semplice appuntamento di 3 giorni, ma l'occasione di coinvolgere chi lavora nell'ecosistema torinese, piemontese e nazionale non solo, offrendo quindi l'opportunità di riflessione e di partecipazione allo sviluppo di traiettorie future per il territorio. Changemaker Communities è una serie di eventi che parla di una visione di trasformazione dei territori, una visione che va al di là della città e include territori marginalizzati. È una serie che parla di abilitazione di articolati ecosistemi che hanno come protagonisti changemaker, istituzioni e attori sociali e che diventano poi punti di riferimento per l'innovazione e l'imprenditoria sociale. Se siete stati con noi la settimana scorsa sapete che il primo appuntamento si è concentrato sul Messico con i nostri colleghi di Ashoka Messico, e se lo siete persi potete trovarlo nell'area video delle nostre pagine Facebook, LinkedIn e YouTube. Oggi ci accompagneranno invece i colleghi di Ashoka Brazil che vi introdurremo a breve e racconteranno un po' il lavoro svolto nella creazione di ecosistemi locali e come poi li stanno connettendo tra loro a livello nazionale. Avremo poi un ultimo appuntamento il 19 luglio per raccontarvi dell'ecosistema torinese. Prima di lasciare la parola a Federico Mento, direttore di Ashoka Italia, approfitto per ringraziare Fondazione CRT, Fondazione Sviluppo e Crescita CRT, Torino Social Impact e OGR, nostri partner con cui è stata co-creata questa iniziativa. Non vi rubo a questo punto altro tempo, lascio la parola a Federico Mento per introdurvi i nostri ospiti di oggi.
Sì, salve, grazie Ele, è un piacere. Adesso passerò, diciamo, alla lingua inglese per introdurre i nostri ospiti. Dear Helena, dear Rafael, it's really a pleasure for us hosting this event and having the opportunity to discuss with you about the experience of Ashoka Brazil on metro areas. Metro areas is really a very important part of our strategy at global level, and I guess that Ashoka Brazil has really a very, very good experience in implementing this strategy, and I guess that we can learn a lot from you, and this is a very, very good opportunity for sharing your experience with the Italian ecosystem and also with the European ecosystem. So I would like to give you the floor, and starting from Helena. And thank you again for accepting our invitation. It's really a pleasure for us having you in this session. So please, Helena, and welcome.
Thank you, Federico. Good afternoon for everybody. And I thank you, Federico, and all Ashoka Italy team for inviting me to be with you today and sharing a little bit of our experience in trying to change the country, the national conversations around growing up. And I will ask my colleague Rafa to share some slides that I think it will make easier for you to follow. So first, this is in relation to Ashoka community in Brazil. Ashoka began to work in Brazil in 1987. I think something happened with the slides. Okay, so it's one of the first countries where Ashoka began to operate. And since then, we have searched, selected, and engaged 384 social entrepreneurs that have have impact in the system. 21 Changemaker schools, 24 Ashoka Young Changemakers, and we will talk a little bit about this in our presentation. And now we are working with the Changemaker hotspots. So just to give you a little idea of the country and the vision, what Ashoka is trying to do worldwide is to create this Everyone a Changemaker movement. So everyone must have the power and know that we have the power to change what must be changed. We must create a world where the solutions outcome the problems. So if everyone can change this impact, change and cause impact in others, then we will have a world with everyone a change maker. And Ashoka learned from the fellows' experience and the fellows mainly the fellows who work with education, kids and youth, that we can begin to learn how to master empathy since we were born. So this is something that every child must masters empathy for a world where everyone can be a change maker. And at the age of the teenagers, every young person must self-identify as a change maker. The way we live today is that the society doesn't demand from the youth this capacity of change making, so that they don't even know that they have the capacity of change making. So we must change the system in such a way that schools, community, and families will demand this for the education of their kids. And everyone at the age of 12 on will have the experience and the tools to cause change. But when we talk about everyone in a huge country like Brazil, it's a big challenge. So I bring here some numbers. We are talking about 48 million students in the basic education, 2.2 million teachers, and 180,000 schools. 8% of all the students are in public schools. And in the federal level, the Ministry of Education, as we name here in Brazil, is responsible for the curriculum and for the programs of the schools of education. The state level, we have 26 states in Brazil. They are responsible for the secondary education, the high school. And the municipal level are mainly responsible for the preschool and the first grades. We have 5,700 municipalities, cities in the country. In the state and municipal levels, we name secretaries of education. So when we talk about the Ashoka community and the size of the country, it's obvious that we cannot change the country in such a way that every child will master empathy and every young person will self-identify as a change maker with being only inside our community. We should engage the strategic organizations that have the power to change education. So please, Rafa, if you can pass the next one. So here I will tell you a little bit of the story of how we create this, the community that create the conditions for us to begin to shift at least the conversation around growing up. So we began in 2014 with this strategy in Brazil, and our first co-lead was one of our fellows, Ana Lúcia Vilela, who has an organization focused on youth and childhood, Helena. So Ana Lúcia agreed to be the co-leader in Brazil. So Ashoka brought all its fellows, and Helena brought all the partners that work with childhood and education. And these people began, first of all, to search, select, and engage the Changemaker schools, that are the schools that show how it is possible to do in all the grades. So we have, in 3 years, they selected 21 schools that are spread all over the country, in rural areas, in urban areas, working in public schools, private schools, preschools, high school. So to show how it is possible for the different social environment, for the different ages, it's possible, and how it should be to make this changemaker education where the child will master empathy and the young people will practice change making. Then we began with this community, we began to search inside the strategic partners that we will talk a little bit later, explain much better, how we could influence them, engage them, create teams inside them that could work with us. So the second picture you see, it's a meeting with the Ministry of Education in 2015, members of our colleague community with the Ministry of Education. At that time, the Ministry of Education recognized the Changemakers schools as examples that should be followed, should inspire the public education. And of course, it had a huge impact because it is the Ministry of Education saying that, not Ashoka. Then the third picture is the 21 Changemakers schools leaders. And the second line, we have, since 2018, begun to search, select, and engage the young changemakers that are people under 20s that had already this experience of change making. So they are not like social entrepreneurs, but they are these 12 years old, 15 years old, 18 years old, who had this experience of being empathize with some aspect of the society that they want to change and organize collectively, not individually, but to organize a group to put an idea in cause impacting the community, in the school, or even in the region. So they could not only, they are important for us, first of all, because if we create teams working with the strategic partners, with the schools, and if we are talking about to put the kids and in charge, we should put them in charge of this movement, I mean, the first lines of this movement. So they are part of our teams, and also we tell their stories a lot. We created many opportunities to spread their stories, because teachers and parents and even the youth do not know that they have this power of change making. So they must learn, listen to stories of 12 years old, 13 years old causing impact, and then they can be aware of how it happens and be inspired to do so. And I will explain later. Then since then we have engaging them in these teams, as in the next photo you see the young change makers in a workshop with the ed school from University of São Paulo. That's one of our strategic partners, creating the proposals to shift the high school policies towards a change maker vision. And then the last photo is the president, just one before, Rafael. It's the president of the UNDIME, that's the Union of National Secretaries of Education, the National Municipal Secretaries of Education, all the 5,700 Secretaries of Education take part in this union, the UNDIME, and he is the president of UNDIME, working with the leaders of the Changemaker schools in Manaus, one of our Changemaker metro areas. So who must be involved and why? First of all, the government, as obviously, because they being the education providers for most children and adolescents in a given territory, it has the capillarity to reach everyone. So we cannot reach everyone without the schools. So we need the government to reach all the schools. have the power, of course, over the system. As I said, we're creating the curriculum, creating the programs for the schools of education. So they are very important to be engaged in this movement. Here we can see one of our schools receiving the certificate that they should inspire the public education from the Ministry of Education, and they are very proud, and this was published in a local newspaper. So next. The second kind of strategic partners that we must have in the movement are the schools of education, because of course the university in general influence the next generation professionals, but mainly the schools of education being responsible for the ed professionals training, not only teachers, but all the professionals involved in the school system. They have the strong power to create the demand for change making among the future professionals, because we need them to demand for the change making education. One of our schools of education that are members of partners in this movement in Brazil is the University of São Paulo School of Education, FEUSP. That is the leading public university in the region, not only in Brazil, but in Latin America. And it's also responsible for training the largest number of masters and doctors. And this is the key point, because in almost all schools of education in the country, there is at least one professor that was trained, took part in the master or doctor program of university. So through University of São Paulo, we can engage the schools of education in the metro areas. Next. The third kind of the type of strategic partner we need is the unions, of course, because they set the standards and the expectations of their professions. They are crucial because they have to be listening to and taken into account for any major change in the system to happen on ground. So we cannot advance without them. And in Brazil, Undime is the, as I said, it's the National Union of the Municipal Education Secretaries that brings together the leaders of 5,570 Brazilian municipalities. They are very important in our strategies. Here I show it's a movie that from our co-leaders from Helena talking about Changemaker education in their intranet. It's the system for all their members. And every month they give one different news about the movement. Next. Then we have the media. Of course, we have to engage media in this because it has the power of agenda setting with immense influence over public opinion, ability to shift youth culture. And it's not only that they can spread our storytelling, but they can frame their news in the vision of everyone a change maker. So it's not only they publishing what we produce, but we work creating teams inside the leading media groups or companies in Brazil, and to influence them, and then they creating the opportunities to talk about everyone a change maker. So in this photo, we have one of these partnerships with Folha de São Paulo, that is the largest circulation newspaper in Brazil with more than 20 million readers in all its platforms. And in this photo, you see it's the same debate they organized. And in the third one is Ashoka young Changemaker, Isabelle, that's now 18. When she began her journey, Changemaker journey, she was 15. And she is in this debate with these great specialists on labor market, talking about the gender issue in the labor market. And she was invited because of this vision that the team inside Folha now has, that we have to show the power of the young change makers. And next, I think this is the last one, the kind of strategic partners we must engage are the publishers. Of the publishers, if the textbooks, the school books, the publishers of the specialized in education. So they have they are very influent, of course, in all the education ecosystem. And here in Brazil, we have some publishers, partners. One of them is the most important of them is Santillana. Santillana is the leading publisher of school books in Spanish-speaking and Portuguese-speaking world. And in Brazil, it reaches 1/3 of all schools. So we remember the numbers. So they reach 27 million students with their materials, their books. And we have some initiatives with Santillana. One of them is that we created a textbook, a school book for the high school, and where we put the stories of our Ashoka Young Changemakers and our fellows and our Changemaker schools, not only their stories, but their methodologies, the tools, and the opportunities they create for the youth to engage in change making. So if with this book we can reach a great proportion of the students in high school level, then it's something that will enable us to get to arrive with the movement in many places of the country that we not necessarily we have our community. I think then I finish my first part and I pass to my colleague Rafael, who is in charge of all this community management. Thank you, Rafael, for changing the slides for me.
You're welcome, Helena. Thank you, Helena, for introducing me, and thank you, Ashoka Italy, especially Leonora and Federico, for inviting us to share our experience here in Brazil. So now we were talking specifically about Changemaker hotspots or Changemaker metro areas, and we use the concept of hotspots because the Changemaker territory could be, of course, a metro area, a big city, but even a state, because of course we should understand the dynamic of each territories and how you can provide the correct tools and connect the correct actors in each territory to rise its strategy. So it's the reason we are using Changemaker hotspots and instead of just metro areas. Let me. Okay, connecting with Helena's presentation, how we organized. So for the first level of this, among the paths of organizing territories or Changemaker hotspots, first is create these quality community, as Helena said. So they are totally involved in the same territory. After that, okay, we spread and localize each territory that we want to work. In Brazil, we have 9 metro areas that are Changemaker hotspots that we are working on, and when in the first level we are creating the Changemaker community, the colleague community in one territory, the second level we are connecting all co-leaders, creating a team of teams, as we usually use here in Ashoka. And in the coming level, the third level, we can join all the kind of agendas, because right now we are very focused on education and youth. So other kind of discussion can be involved in the coming days. So we can talk about climate, and we can talk about technology and humanity, gender, and all very urgent issues we are debating around the world. And it's very interesting to know how to connect these big issues with these two first that we are working on. So the metro areas, the dynamic of metro areas is the connection and the opportunity of exchange among the co-leaders. So what is probably a Changemaker hotspots? Changemaker hotspots are territories of multiple actors who connect with each other and collaborate in distributing tools, content, and opportunities for all people to recognize and practice their Changemaker potential. So in the territory, we are rising and encouraging people to identify themselves as change makers. And Changemaker hotspots also is part of an ecosystem where people engage by sharing everyone a change maker vision. So everyone a change maker, as Helena said, is Ashoka's vision, but we are working as a big global movement as well. And we understand that the hotspot is this ecosystem where the things happen. Okay, what's the goals for working in Changemaker hotspots? Okay, the strategy aims to expand the opportunity to everyone be engaged as part of the worldwide movement, as I said. And it's important to highlight a worldwide movement for the good of all. Ashoka has organized its own community to collaborate locally with strategic partners, which can stimulate social demand for change, as Helena said, reaching new levels of change. So when we talk about new levels of change, we can talk about municipal level, regional level, national level or global level, but also we can talk about systemic change. And it's very important because we are trying to change old patterns for new paradigms, as Helena said, thinking how each child masters empathy, how each young person self-identify as a change maker, thinking bigger, how every person around the world can self-identify as a change maker. As an open resource, Ashoka has provided the knowledge coming from its community to stimulate social innovations in many sectors to solve the most complex and systemic challenges around the world. It is inviting all change makers to propose new paradigms and framework to the humanity and the planet. So it's the reason to keep increasing our community of social entrepreneurs, also our community of Ashoka Young Change Maker, put all of them together in the same community because there is a power in this meeting of these two kind of innovators and bringing co-leaders from each strategic partner, because this meeting among them is very, very powerful and bring up potential for leverage this strategy, because the change starts in the territory. The change starts where the people live. And if we live in the territory, in the municipality, and we are looking for a big and global movement, we should start in this level, or in this local and very local level, to stimulate connections, to stimulate practice, change-making practice and thoughts, to engage the and increase the number of co-leaders and expand this movement as a global movement. So it's not so free and open to understand hotspots. So there are some criteria to observe. The first one, we should provide a high density of members of everyone Changemaker core leader community. Should be young changemakers, should be fellows or co-leaders from strategic partners. At least one community member willing to lead the territory. We need this leader, and can't be Ashoka. It's not Ashoka team going to the territory and connecting, mobilizing people. So it's very important to understand the local agenda as well, to connect this strategy to what the people are interested in each territory, and who is the best person to move forward with this strategy, bring and engage more co-leaders in each territory. And we need, of course, the presence of at least 2 strategic partners. We can't move forward without the strategic partners. They are key in this strategy. At least 2 ongoing or potential connections between the strategic partners and co-lead team, because we are talking about people. So yes, the strategic partner, the institution, can create the social demand and simulate the social demand. However, we should identify inside each strategic partner who is able to co-lead this movement. So, and identifying inside the strategic partner the co-lead, we bring this co-lead to work together with our big co-leader community. Is the reason why we identify who wants to lead in the territory. And the territory is a region, can be a city or a state, who which makes a lot of influence and have a lot of influence in the country, or has a good dimension of and can reach nationally or provide some influence globally. It's very important. In the local community and civil society has considerable strength. Why? Because we need to connect and open these possibilities to be co-leader to everyone. And okay, we have the institutionalization of fellows Ashoka and Changemaker. We are looking for co-leaders inside each strategic partner. So we should involve the local leaders coming from social movements and the strongest and biggest civil society organizations in each territory. And why arrange our strategy around territories? So I think I just told some of them. Let's see. The potential is bigger than our own community. Yes, when we are involving the actors from a territory, we have more, we are more potent than just a Ashoka community. So we came stronger. Social entrepreneurs was the first framework of systemic change Ashoka has worked on, and we keep this search for social entrepreneurs, and we consolidate the field and market the role of social entrepreneurs innovating and facing complex challenges around the world. So having this community, we can provide knowledge and so deeper experience in this big ecosystem that we are organizing in the territories, in the hotspots. Many other actors beyond social entrepreneurs are as key as them to increase innovations and deliver a change-making demand that let all be part. Thinking differently of old patterns and transforming the world since the very local level to the global one. Yes, it's the key, because we are talking here to how we can be democratic and let everyone to recognize her or himself as a change maker. So, talk about how to very first here, get to know the Ashoka community in the territory. It's very important. Understand what the fellows and Ashoka and change makers and schools are working on, and try to identify their interests and how they connect among themselves. Map the main potential strategic partners. So identify which organization, medias, school secretary, publishers, and which stance of government can be involved and has this approach of change making. Identify the red leaders within the strategy partners, because of course there are many co-leaders ready to work and looking for opportunities to create and to innovate with their thoughts about change making, and they are the perfect co-leaders inside the strategic partners. Map the main local agenda. I just said about that, because the main agenda will be will stimulate the engagement and encourage the people to be in this big game. Create opportunities of connections and exchange among co-leaders. It's very, very potential, and it must be done, because we need the co-leader community very, very connected and think together and sharing the same values and concerned about the same challenge. So the connection is essential, and let they create together and set up the teams of teams, how they arrange this work in territory. It's not a shock that you say how to work among themselves. They will create, and we should let them to create, and encourage them to develop tools and scripts to let others know and practice change making and set their teams up. It's very, very important, because what we are doing is stimulating these co-leaders to share, to rethink his practice, think how they can practice, including change-making approach, and systematize and organizing what they are doing, and sharing this content among the ecosystem of in pairs. So we are talking about creating demand to society to stimulate how you can create the social demand, but also how we can share our experience of our change maker experience with my peers. So just imagine to share our community in Brazil. So here we have our young change makers and Ashoka young change makers and fellows. We can note that they are very, very concentrated in the coast. So we are working this region, but looking at the Amazon, other regions as well, because we should increase Changemaker community in these hotspots. And it's very strategic for us in Brazil, even for the world. Okay, here we have our hotspots. So we are working on 9 hotspots: Manaus and Tapajós in the middle of Amazon, Fortaleza, Sertão, Zona da Mata, and Bahia in the northeast, and our big community concentrated in the southeast, in Belo Horizonte, Rio de Janeiro, and São Paulo, and whole south that we are starting to work in the coming months. Okay, I will pass again to Helena. I invite Helena to share a very short experience that you have here in Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. Sorry, I was on mute. Just to illustrate a little bit how it worked, we will talk a little about the Manaus experience. Rafa can pass next one, please. So Manaus, as Rafael showed in the map, is the capital of Amazonas state in the north of the country, but it's not only the most important capital of the state of Amazonas, but of all the region of Amazon forest. So it's 1/3 of the country, and we are talking, it's a city of 2.2 million people. And the municipal system responsible for the first grades and the preschool has 500 schools and 250,000 students. And we have in the college community, the parents, the school leaders, the young change makers, and they have been working together since 2015, when what was one of the first places that we began with the Changemaker strategy, even before having systematized it as a strategy. In some way, we learned from the experience of this community in Manaus. And at the end, after 5 years, the Secretary of Education created the structure that will enable the Changemaker education in all the system, even after the mayor resumed his mandate. And we have also programs in the ed schools, in the main ed schools, in the federal and the state University of Amazonas, focused on Changemaker education. So next slide shows a little bit of some images of how it happened. So just one more tick, because the last photo is not appearing, but anyway, in the first one, we have this group with everybody with the same t-shirt. This is an association of parents. They are the ones that in 2015, when the Ministry of Education recognizes these Changemaker schools are examples to be followed to inspire the public education, this association of parents demanded from the Secretary of Education to organize a workshop where the 2 Changemaker schools from the municipal system could show themselves to the other principals and could inspire the others. And also they brought Changemaker schools from other parts of the country, other parts of the country, and they created a working group inside the Secretary of Education, where it was interesting because they put not only the pedagogical team, but also the bureaucratic team, the administrative team, working together. And this is very important to create the possibilities of the Changemaker education. And the principals of the Changemaker schools working with the teams inside the Secretaries of Education and with the parents to create the possibilities for all the schools to begin a journey, a Changemaker journey. And in the second photo, we can see a workshop that this co-lead community in Manaus did during the UNGIMI, the National Union of the Secretaries of Education. It was a national meeting of the UNGIMI, and they had a 2 hours workshop with our co-lead community, showing how the connections between the young change makers, that is this girl who is speaking in the microphone, and the person from the Secretary of Education and the Changemaker school principals, all together, showing how they could build a proposal for the whole city. So it was something very new, because normally only Secretaries of Education teams goes to this conferences and show what they are doing. So it called the attention of many people. And the third photo, I don't know, Rafa, if you can give you one more click, but yes, this is the mayor of Manaus, and he is inaugurated at the last year of his term, and he is inaugurating one of the 6 Changemaker education reference centers that he created in the last year of his mandate to make Changemaker education possible for all the city, and something that would remain even after there is the change in the mayor. So this happened 2019, 2020, the other 5 were inaugurated, and now they are working, continuing the process. I think it's only these 2 slides that we had to show the story, this experience a little bit. We don't need to enter in the next examples, because we should have some time to talk a little bit, and but then we will share the presentation that has some more examples and could give some more details of how we work. So I invite Rafa to be back here.
So, Helena, Rafa, thank you so much for your presentation. It's a really fascinating approach, and many thoughts about your experience. And one thought it's more, I guess, on theoretical. It's more a theoretical point. Basically, so the organization are in a certain way driven by needs, and they work basically on the effects of social needs. Sometimes there are organizations driven by outcomes and impact, and I guess that our approach is really driven by change maker. So it's completely different approach from theoretical point of view. And it's really fascinating, because it's really a different focus on the intervention, and the intervention is more on creating links and social capital and empower stakeholders, and working with jiu-jitsu partner. That it's another crucial part of our strategy, and it's really fascinating. And I have a lot of questions for you, and the first question is related to territories with poor social capital. That it's the level of social capital, the level of social engagement is at a certain point one of the criteria that Rafa has shown. So in such territories with low level of social capital, which could be our strategy for engaging the community, and from your perspective also, which are the main barriers we should face in implementing such complex approach? So I guess that we can start from these 2 big questions.
Yes, good questions, Federico. I will begin, and whoever wants to complement. But I think in the territories with not so much social capital. We have this experience of having Ashoka Young Changemakers or Changemakers schools, or either fellows that are in these parts of the country, very remote parts of the country where there are not so much, the civil society is not so much organized. And it's hard for them, of course, to influence the ecosystem, but they do a good job. Especially, I can tell a little bit about our Ashoka Young Changemaker that's in the middle of one part of Amazon that's really remote, and we don't have any connections there. And he is inspiring the Secretary of Education because of the visibility that Ashoka gave to him. He called the attention of the local media first. First, he was in the national media. It was interesting, just to tell you, but when we selected the first 9 Ashoka Young Changemakers in Brazil, it was shown in the leading news, in the TV Global. It is seen by 40,000 million people. And then everybody in his city began to say only twice this city was in the national news. And both of them because of tragedies, because of a criminal that was hidden there, or because of nature disaster. And it was first time that it was in the news because of a good thing, to say that one of the young persons that are selected by international organization. And this gave him so much strength that he began to empower the other young change makers. They work together and they go to all the schools, and they have all the schools open to listen to them. They are the Fridays for the Futures, this movement that is led by Greta. And they engaged all the kids in the city in this movement. And then they engaged the Secretary of Education, and then the State Secretary of Education created a program inspiring him with his image, his name, everything. So this is the kind of thing that we can help to organize, even without having all the structure in the community and the connections that you have in another place like São Paulo or Manaus.
Very good. I just want to add a few comments. I agree perfectly, Helena, your explanation. And it's the reason we should think what we are calling of territory, of hotspots, because it's the reason we left the closed conception of metro area, because we should understand the territory in different ways. So not just in the geography perspective, and not just working in cities separated. We should work in a region, understand the identity, the common challenges, and of course the common strength and potential. So I think it's a good exercise to do and to reflect when choose and determine the limits of a territory.
Thank you. And another crucial question is about how we can connect different hotspots. So in Brazil, you have many different hotspots, and from the north, in the center, in the south part of Brazil. So how you connect these different hotspots, and how we can, this is more a strategic question, how we can connect the national ecosystem with other national ecosystem that it's in a certain way a way of leveraging hotspot at global level, and I guess it's something we should reflect more on. It's a strategic point for Ashoka, how we can really build a network of networks, and it's really fascinating fascinating vision. But in your experience, how you connect the different hotspots together?
Okay, I can start and then pass to Helena. Yes, we are talking about a very big goal, and we call as a movement that's globally, and we are talking about a long-term impact, global impact. On the other hand, we can think that each actor in the territory should provide impact in his or in them own territory. So it's very, very important. And about asking your question, how you do this connection is the base of our strategy to create team of teams, because we will shape the territory, understand how they are connecting and producing experiences, content, and change making content and experience in the territory. But when we bring everyone to a big community, a big national community of change makers, a big national community of co-leaders, they have a lot to exchange among themselves, and they have a lot of experiences, practices, tools, and of course, this logic of working pairs, I think it's the best way to connect and make this community stronger.
Yes, just to say one aspect that engagement means doing something together. It's not, oh, you are now part of a Go-Lead community. It's a stamp that you can show. It is about being part of a community in doing things together. So there are things that happen and are working in the level of the territory, and there are things that are happening in the level of the country. So they, especially the Ashoka Young Changemakers, for instance, they are a community, not only in Brazil, but with the other countries too. And I think the same that we are seeing happening among the Ashoka Young Changemakers in the international level, because when they took part in the selection process of the Ashoka Young Changemakers in the other countries, and they organized things together and etc. We should think about this kind of connections in the level of the metro area hotspots, territories that we are working, creating connections and opportunities to engage and change.
Thank you, and I have a last question, and because we are close to the end of this session, and it's if you can choose one lesson learned from the different lessons you have learned from your experience, which lesson you would like to share with us, and why?
Just one? It's hard. But okay, I'm thinking about one lesson learned is that the importance of knowing who is the innovators inside the strategic partners, spotting them. Because we normally talk about innovators in the civil society, but inside the strategic partners, the big organizations, governments, it's not so common. And when they are there, they are key for everything that we are going to do.
And let co-leaders show what they are doing and what they understand as a change maker practice and knowledge, because everyone has this knowledge and something to share and to teach us. So it's the first step for me.
Thank you. And I don't know if you have time for a last question, because we have a question from the auditors and from Luciana. And I don't know if you see the question on the screen.
The education during the COVID pandemic now.
Yes.
Yes, what I would like I could share is that in Brazil, this community began a movement to take the opportunity that everything was out of order during the pandemics in the school system, to create new possibilities and to engage more and more parents, teachers, and students in opportunities to do things differently and put kids in charge. And we have the Ashoka Young Changemakers, most of them working with schools and in education initiatives and being heard by their schools. And the Changemaker schools showing how it's possible to work in a different organization, not driven by the traditional rules of the schools building. So how can, in a situation like that, create new opportunities of learning for everyone? This is a campaign named Reviravolta da Escola.
Thank you, Helena. Thank you, Rafa. And so we are at the end of the session, and I would like to thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's really useful having this moment of sharing knowledge, and I guess that your experience is really very useful for us to understand more how we can work on this view, and how we can really implement an hotspot strategy at local level, and how we can link together the different hotspots. It's something that I guess we should do in the next years, and I hope really to have you in Turin at the Ashoka Changemaker Summit, and maybe we can organize a physical session on hotspot, bringing together our colleagues working on hotspot, and we'll have a very beautiful venue in Turin for workshop and seminars. So I guess it's something that we should organize if you are available to travel to Italy and stay with us and stay with the Ashoka community. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon. And obrigado.
Obrigada, Federico. Thank you very much.
E grazie